This is for you, which I will deliver. Let me read it first. On the occasion of its 50th anniversary celebratory events, the Board of GEI recognizes Alessandro Benetton for his leadership in fostering the transatlantic dialogue and strengthening the relationship between the United States and Italy. Thank you. Okay, now I will take it back because we didn't have the time to frame it. So
we started with the wrong foot.
With the wrong.
No, because I tell you something.
Sorry, it's not taken back format.
But I have bad memories about this sort of action because actually when I was very young, probably 6 or 7, it did happen that I won a sport event. So we went to this dinner with the whole family, everybody.
You were what? 6, 5?
No. It was one of those cases. I actually won.
Yeah. But how old were you?
I was 6, 7. Anyway, so they wanted to grant me with something that would testify, the victory like this. And then eventually they didn't give it to me because they said, sorry, we have to frame it. Eventually the object disappeared, and eventually I found out that the problem was that they did spell Alessandro with 2 L's, so that was the origin of the thing. So,
let's check that it's rightly spelled.
It's rightly spelled.
Okay, so this I promise.
I'll check my mail.
I promise in front of everybody, the whole crowd, that this will be returned to you before you leave. So maybe we'll give it to Bella, or I'll put it here, so that it will be in safe hands. But there is another little testimony. Being such an accomplished man in sports, and considering that we have our celebration here at the Racket and Tennis Club, which is the premier sports club in New York, there is a little memento for you, which is a pair of cufflinks with the insignia of the club. So if you want to show it, there we go. And I'm not going to take this back, but if you prefer the red, we're going to go check upstairs. You can change it.
Absolutely fine. I like, as you can tell, I like the green and the blue.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we put it here also. Okay.
We don't have to frame it.
And now we can sit down. Hold on. And okay. You take the microphone. I'm not sure whether it's on or not. There we are. Does it work?
Yes.
Yes. No.
Does it? Yes.
Perfect. So I met Alessandro the first time in Boston when he was a student at the Harvard Business School, and we had a lovely dinner with his father Luciano and him, and I have very, very fond memories of that occasion when we met. And so, Alessandro, you have to tell us, how do you feel about the fact that after not so many years, Harvard has done a business case study about what you have done? It must be rather something. You were a student, now you're here debating the business case. So what emotion?
Let me say hello to everybody, and I'm really happy to be here and thankful for his presence. Let me just say one thing. You have mentioned that as a mantra, I got a sentence from saying from.
Hold on, I have to interrupt a second. Please, take my seat there. Go. There is a chair for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Sorry,
and of course there is a sentence from somebody else, which is Don Giussani. But in reality, in the last 3 years, I have forged through these important changes in my personal life and in the life of the companies that I'm leading. I have forged my own sentence, which is that a person is what you do when the unexpected occurs to you. And I think that is the summary of how I can describe what has happened in my life since the day I saw you. So we have a very long part of my life where basically my main objective was to find my own path, develop my own career, found my own company, basically build my own credibility and be happy with myself as a person, as an individual. And then it's the moment when the unexpected occurs, which is about 4 years ago, when events, also traumatic and dramatic, both external to the family and internal to the family, actually led me to this new cycle of my life that has been profoundly discontinuous in respect to my life. And I want to leave this moment, talking about the Harvard case, as a stepping stone, as a part of a journey that has started this new cycle that looks very promising and very exciting and with a lot of satisfaction and recognition. But at the end of the day, recognition should always be an additional motivation for what has to come next.
Of course, so you will tell us what comes next, but let's start from the study, from the business case, because I think that can help us frame what you have done in the past 3 years. So what is the main point of the business, Harvard business case?
I think that my vision since day one was based on having a good memory of the past, which somehow, sometimes in very successful business and families, it gets lost over the years. I always say that the real enemy of success is success itself, because you start thinking that what you have done can last forever, and eventually you start confusing habits with traditions. So my first, and it was, I'm not going to say, for sure it was unexpected for me to find myself in the position of leadership, because most of my life had been spent doing my own things, and when we had to discuss things in the family, I was most of the time disagreeing. So for sure I did not have a path.
Give us an example.
Well,
if it comes to mind.
The only moment, the only cycle in which I was actually doing something, completely convinced was the Formula One chairmanship. But it was a different phase, a very important phase in terms of establishing the credibility of the family as being, and the group as being a player that could play in different fields other than textile and clothing. And then I was the only moment in which I was in touch with the families, that when I was asked to join the Benetton clothing company. So that was back in 2012, and I became the chairman. And after 1 year, I left. And I left because I thought that although I was agreeing of the fact that the past always needs to be respectful. You always need to be very respectful, and it's a value, it's a legacy, it's something important. There are moments in which you really have to change your trajectory. And I had the impression that the company was not ready yet. I always want to underline that I always had a great relationship with my family. From an emotional and sentimental point of view, we always get along, and we still do, but we always had, even when we had different opinions.
Sorry, thinking about your father, who is always very zen, who always seems to be, looking forward in a very peaceful way, one would find it hard not to have a fantastic relationship with him. But I'm sorry, this was just to bring him into the memory of our talk.
Yeah, well, I tell you a little bit about this Zen thing.
Yeah, yes.
Because I got an example that could actually fit an important chapter of my life. So to make a long story short, I think there is a moment where you really have to change things, have the courage. And I was lucky enough to have enough credibility and self-esteem not to do something that I was not agreeing with. And that was a publicly known thing. So that was a moment of disagreement, if you like to say. You mentioned my father.
Yeah.
No, I tell you one story. In reality, we had another moment in which let me put it this way: we had a different point of view. And as I said, I don't want you to to misinterpret me, you know, the relationship as well.
Sorry, it's the role of children to being in disagreement with their fathers. I see it every day with my children. So.
Exactly. And so I basically put myself in the situation where, since I was independent and successfully economically independent, I could actually, you know, afford it. In any case, so the reality is that when I actually met somebody here in the room who has mentioned that they bought a company from us that prints the tennis racket. So when I graduated from HDS, you know, I did my field study, you know, some sort of thesis with a professor that back then was not famous yet. It was Michael Porter.
Well.
We became very much friends, and
A
so
guru.
it was, yeah. To a certain extent, he has been my guru. So I graduated and I did my field study on the sports goods industry, because my family back then had diversified in the sports goods industry. You know, we are in a sport club, so you all know what we're talking about. You know, the company was Nordica, Prince, Rollerblade, you know, many other companies. So to make a long story short, with Michael, we came to the conclusion that even if a company was doing extremely well, it was extremely successful, potentially there was going to be the need for an important change in terms of business model, because back then the distribution was based on small mom and pop shops, right? And so you did not have a chains, Sportler and you know, the big chains that you see in the sports and goods industry today did not exist yet. So basically the idea was like, we have to change before the market makes us change. So I went back to Italy, and supposedly I have to join that team. And so I explained my point of view. And the management looked at me and says, oh, look at this guy, no, which is normal, you know, you're 26 old, you went to Harvard, okay, you went to Goldman Sachs, but you know, now you explain to me why we should change, and we are so successful, we're making so much money. And so I went to these Zen people that you're talking to, you know, talking about, and I explained, you know, I said, listen, you know, I have a doubt, you know, because I think I found something with Michael, which is, you know, we can find analogies among different things. Back then, if you go back to the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, nobody would care if you were coming to move from one sector to the other in the analysis. So if you were a specialist in the chemical industry, you could just talk about chemical. If you were coming from textile, you were textile. So there was no a cross-pollination or any sort of interaction among different things. And so I said, you know, I think I got something, you know, I got, and he told me, listen, you know, I'm so proud of you, you know, you have such a strong personality that, you know, you're 26 and you're explaining professional management, and so I'm truly, you know, very profoundly proud of you. But I have to tell you something, you know, if I have to choose between you and the management, I pick the management all the time.
And he said it in a very Zen way.
And he said it in a very Zen way.
Lovely,
so,
lovely
I mean,
story.
I got many chapters of my life, and that's what the book talks about. You know, for those of you that do not know, I wrote this book, has been translated in English.
La traiettoria.
Yeah, it was not supposed, I mean, it really sounds very, you know, arrogant, you know, I think to write books when you have done something that I consider just, I'm not going to say normal, but okay, I've been successful, but not so important to write a book. In reality, what happened is that I wrote my stories when I left Benetton, that I told you about, and I did it for myself. And eventually, you know, one of these young, I do many things with the young generation. I'm really passionate about that, not just because of the technology, but also because I put myself into their shoes and I see how difficult it is, so I like to have a dialogue with them. Also because the history of my personal life has led me to have a very strong relationship with my kids. And so one of these guys, you know, one day found the book, which was not a book, it was just like a, you know, a pile of papers. And he said, do you mind if I read it? I said, no. And eventually he came back to me and says, listen, you know, this is fantastic, because the things that you talk about actually happen to a lot of us. And I said, no, well, forget about it. You know, my last name is a given last name, my experience, my background, my family, you know, makes it so special. Then eventually he convinced me of the fact that many things that happened to me actually were very frequent and common for any younger person, a young person that is trying to grow up and find his own path and his own trajectory. So we put it in the book that has been quite successful, and I'm very happy about it. And there is something that has happened today that is making me think, because it happened just a few hours ago. I went to see a very famous and successful person who's the head of Blackstone, Stephen Schwarzman, and he gave me his book. And when I asked him, you know, why did you write this book? And he said, well, the amazing thing is that when I wrote it, I didn't know really why I was writing it, but eventually I found out that, you know, the content is something that applies to anybody who has to want to become an entrepreneur. So I think that it's what I like also about this part of my life is that you know, getting involved into aspects that regard the life of everybody is super exciting. It's challenging, but also there is room for a new vision, where the vision is that you can demonstrate. Like Al Gore told me at the beginning of the 90s, that you eventually can make things that are advantageous to everybody, and you should not look at you know, sustainability, whether it's social or whether it's for the environment, as something, a price to pay, but much rather as the opportunity to have a new vision that we all should have in this new vision, to reshape our life and our activities in a way that can be also successful on the business side.
Wonderful. So let's translate this into the practical aspect of the business. So what you found when you arrived was a difficult situation. Your uncle had died. The family had to reorganize and regroup. As you said, there had been both external and internal events. So you arrived not in, let's say, in the smoothest situation, but you were also coming from the outside at that time. So how did you approach the challenge? Because it must have been not very easy.
I was very lucky that I was coming from the outside, but I knew from the inside. So I think that my biggest asset was actually knowing the history of the family, which I thought that a lot of people had forgotten. And so if we went back to the successful years, I was talking to some of you, you know, the beginning of the 80s, you know, we were coming here, opening the stores. You know, I would have people at customs stopping me because of my last name and says, "Are you that Benetton?" You know, with the stores. In reality, I was just a normal student, but I was really paying attention to what was happening. And if you look at the evolution of the group, it was, you know, because of the Formula One, the colorful sweater, the courageous, edgy advertising campaign, that a sort of brand above everything actually was forged and was built. And that was the basis for the business, even the diversified business, because at that time, when privatization came, people look at us and says, okay, you know, this is right guys, you know, they know how to manage different things, they, you know, they're young, they come from the countryside, they know political relationship, and Formula One played a very important role. And of course, you know, the major ingredient was as well, you know, the attitude of the entrepreneurs, of my father, you know, being international, looking for platform, looking for partnership. So I think that over the years, you know, we were always the same people, they were always the same people, but you know, you start analyzing the things from a different angle, you know, which is a less visionary angle, but it's much more a technical, financial business angle. So what I wanted to do is actually to bring that back and actually do what they would have done 40 years ago. And I realized that in order to do that, I had to change everything. There was no other way than change everything. But for me, what I call the inspiring values of the founding fathers are still there, and that is what motivates me every day when when I woke up. Now that's what the philosophy that I had in mind. And then how did I apply it? I applied basically creating for strong discontinuity, looking for the right partner to do the largest take private ever done in Europe, doing the largest merger and creating the largest company in the world in terms of travel retail, and so basically it was like having a vision, a dream, looking at the ingredients that I had, and trying to match those two things.
So that is of course very impressive, because then it translated into companies, into reorganization of the business. But I'd like to point out that your family, in fact, which is not necessarily part of the Italian tradition, was one of the first ones that had the inspiration, the vision, the idea of diversifying from the founding business, which was clothing, into diversified investment by creating a family holding and sort of a family office, if you want, what today people call a family office, which diversified it in infrastructure and in many different investments. So that is what you found, and how did you reorganize it?
Right, that's what I found, and I think that what had been done was just marvelous and fantastic. And I thought that there was an opportunity to reinterpret some of the assets in a different manner. As I said, go back to things that we always did in the past, having partners, looking for international platform, being exposed to the world by not deciding through an investment bank or with a consultant how to change things, but actually, change by doing, launching new projects. We have launched so many projects. So I mean, take Mundys that you mentioned. We have lost most of the cash flow when I got in, because we got out from the most important asset. So we had to rebuild it, and we did it with Blackstone. And take one asset, the airport of Rome. Airport of Rome has been voted as the best airport in Europe for the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm happy to point out that we are an Italian family and we are an Italian group, even if we are profoundly international. So you take the airport of Rome. Now, airport of Rome has the largest, we finalized a few weeks ago, the largest solar park that is making the on-ground, in-ground activities completely independent, exactly, of carbon-free. We're going to be completely carbon-free by 2040. We have launched a project that is called the Innovation Hub. So basically we have dedicated an area where we have put some money and where the young people can come in and tell us what the new ideas are in terms of innovation, venture capital ideas that could improve the experience of the travelers. We are a group, Mundys, where out of 1,700 directors, we got 1/3 female. Of the last, all the people that have been hired since I got into office are by definition 50% equal gender. And we're doing very well, and financially we're doing very well. That was what I had in mind, demonstrating that you can actually do things without always thinking that there is a trade-off or a compromise that you have to run into.
Can we go through the lines of business? So Mundys is in airports.
Mundys in airports. It's highways.
In Spain, no?
Eurotunnel. It's Italy, Spain, France. Central America, Chile, and Brazil, and the United States as well. We've got some infrastructure there.
And then you have the food business.
Then we have a food business, which was another important thing that we did.
Which is under the umbrella of
Avolta. It's a new name, proudly Avolta. So You know, we were able to, like Mundys was the inspiration for the world. Avolta is a good reminder of the genius that we had in our country. Yeah, because there was also a joke that I'm not going to say about how.
No, tell us the joke.
Well, somebody told me that, you know, it was Alessandro Volta. It was Alessandro's turn, you know.
I see. Okay.
But no, it was named Volta, and it's an interesting story because we want here again trying to connect the past with the future, and we thought that Autogrill could be more just restoration on highways, and so basically it's a group of 100. Pretty much this year the turnover will be around 14 billion. Profitable business. We are, you know, the people that manage all the contracts and all the airports, food and beverage, and you know, when you go to, we got a part of the concession here in JFK, and we got Newark as well. So it's a business that it's basically 1/3 in the States, 50% in 40% in Europe, 50% South America, and the remaining the rest.
So if I may add, because as you have detected, Alessandro is very modest, but the business model behind what they're doing, I think is a genius model. When, you know, if you go on the highway between here and Washington, for example, and you stop at a gas station, and then there is a big food restoration, you know, and you enter, and the food, you know, there is the McDonald's, the Starbucks, Chinese food, you know, whatever the concession is. It's all under the umbrella of HMS Marriott, which is the company that you bought. So where is the genius? That if you enter, it doesn't matter where you buy. If you buy $1, it will go into, because they are all owned as licensee by HMS Marriott, which is the company that they own. And the same is true, I think, from JFK. You have several. You know, if you go to Starbucks, if you go to, you think it's Starbucks. No, it's under the umbrella of this company, which is a fantastic business model.
And when we did the merger with Dufry is the largest duty-free company in the world. We added the other concepts that are now part of the same umbrella, including one brand that for sure you know, which is Hudson.
Of course, yes. So.
And even there we are experimenting. You know, we recently in Milan launched a project that is called Avolta Next, in which again we set up a space for young people to come up with ideas, which we finance, that will make the experience more modern for the consumer.
So you can give us some more names, because you know what's behind, you know, people that will recognize, you know, Hudson, Autogrill, and HS Marriott, Starbucks, exactly, yeah. So and then there is, so the business part, which is the original, the clothing business, is separate and independent, operating, keep doing the same, the United Colors of Benetton. I met someone just earlier, and I said, oh, you know, I have Mr. Benetton coming, who's an American, you know, no. Says, oh, United Colors of Benetton. So clearly that left an impression. I remember coming back from JFK, there were the big posters with all the kids and everything else. So how is that business faring? What's the strategy for that?
Well, you're absolutely right. 2 comments on what you said. First of all, you know, it's something that we are so proud of, and as I said, maybe I didn't articulate enough before, but I think that has been the inspiration of everything that we've done. You know, this fact that we were people, and the invention that my father did with the campaign, the edgy campaign, with you know, a real trailblazer, you know, in terms of innovation, and somehow an inspiration. You could actually say an inspiration, and it's still very much alive. Unfortunately, the business in the last is not living a positive season because clearly, there's been a lot of pressure from competition, and in the last few years has become clear that some models need to be completely rearranged. Although it does count very little from an economical point of view, it accounts less than 1% of what we do in terms of value.
What is the total turnaround of the group? Putting all
It depends
together?
how you count it, but I would say that it's
If you
about,
put together,
well, then
if you put together Mundys and Avolta and
well,
you said 14
it's
billion
not,
for
I
Avolta.
cannot give you a definite answer because Mundys, we have a majority. Avolta, we are the largest shareholder, but we do not control 51%, so we would be able to consolidate sales. But what I can tell you is that altogether we're talking about 150,000 people. That's what I care more than anything else in terms of feeling the right level of pressure about what we decide to do. And aggregate turnover, if I put that, I'm leaving aside our financial strategic investments like Cellnex, which is one of the largest tower company in Europe, where we have a share of 10%, but we are basically the largest shareholder. Altogether, I would say around 20 billion.
20 billion, okay, which is, of course, makes it one of the largest economic reality in Italy. So, administrative order. I hope that everybody understood that the dessert is there, the coffee is there. So help yourself to coffee. I will open up very soon to questions. Time is running out, so we have to be very quick. I would like to address one last interesting aspect. You mentioned about the family coming together. You were coming from the outside. Unfortunately, a couple of the elderly passed away. So there is an issue of governance. We have seen that not every family in Italy has been successful in organizing a smooth transition. Not to mention names, I will mention Luxottica, which managed to be very often on the front page. And to mention a name, I have to say that I think has been very successful. Instead of organizing a transition, it's the name of Berlusconi, Il Cavaliere, their children, it was very smooth transition. Some lawyer here will claim that its study was very instrumental in organizing it, and so they were very intelligent in organizing, but it's perfectly smooth. The same can be said of your family. You all came together, you were chosen as being the leader of the family, and even if the ownership is split, but you stay together and you are together. What is the secret?
First of all, I don't think there is a secret, and I think every story has its own reasons. In our case, what I can say is that there are a few elements. The first of all is that I had a project. I had an idea about what the company should go. And when you have that as an ingredient, it's very important because you don't talk about how to share things or how to divide things, but you talk about, you take the conversation to a different level. Like, my question was always, where do you want to be in 10 years? Because if you just want to tell me that you want to be richer, then eventually we cannot stay together because that cannot be the only final objective. So I think that the project that I described, was convincing, I guess, to everybody. And so for me, the question was take advantage of the dramatic discontinuity that we had, internal and external, and basically ask people, we're lucky because we can choose. We can choose whether we want to stay together. We can choose whether we don't want to stay together. And we need to do it on the basis of what we want to be in 10 years' time. Do you want to be a rich guy, who's living a healthy life and has no trouble, or do you want to build on this legacy, on these values, on these roots? And interestingly enough, when people were talking when I was outside. They were talking about things. They were disagreeing many times on smaller things. But when you take it to this level, actually, you find out that eventually everybody has your same point of view. So basically, once I realized that was the case, I just built on that in practical terms. We have designed a new governance, which is very solid. We get along very much. We do share all.
Can you give us some aspects of this, the main pillars of the governance?
Well, basically, I want to respect the history of the family. The history of the family has been done by 4 individuals, so we got 4 families, and we're going to have 4 families forever, even if the people are going to be much more. So the governance will have to reflect that type of balance. So we were not going to find in 10 years' time that you got 50 people having different ideas, everybody's own. I mean, every branch will have to name one person. And that is going to simplify and leave alone Edizione, who can then just concentrate with a very strong management on its own interest.
Wonderful. Let's open it to the public, to you. We don't have much time. Questions? One. I would group 2 or 3 questions and then do it, okay? One, Stefano and Gianluca. Anybody else? Okay, let's start with this. You go first.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes.
Can you hear?
I can hear you all right.
Okay, that's great. Well, Mr. Benetton, my name is Tommaso Veneroso. I'm the CEO and chairman of the North American and South American market for Fonderia Serie Royale of Udine, Italy. So neighbors, suppose. I happened to read your book, La Traiettoria, available on Kindle, by the way, so it's convenient. And you emphasize, which I appreciate, the importance of creating your own path outside the family business, which is something that you stress today, and which is quite important. So I have 2 quick questions, if you can. You briefly have already answered, but how did this philosophy influence your strategic vision, in particular for Edizione and the creation of Mundys, particularly in addressing challenges like global infrastructure competition and the evolving of the mobility sector at large? And the other question, because I have a lot of my friends in Friuli that are owning family business, are quite miserable, unfortunately, because it's a cross and it's a blessing at the same time. So what advice would you offer to leaders navigating the balance between family legacy and in particular innovation?
Okay. Shall we group them so that we can we can hear you.
My name is Gianluca Galletto. I have an advisory firm and that works in urban technology with both governments and companies, and I'm also the advisory board of Smart City Expo. So it's something that related I'd like to connect you on this. But most importantly, we just launched a non-profit that is going to have with the purpose in New York to help the Italian ecosystem to grow, because it's small. We're behind other countries a lot, and so I mean, just to make it clear, is we're behind Portugal here. I mean, and it's a small country. So the question is, what do you say you are? Because you talked a lot about innovation. How is your company, if you're so supporting the ecosystem, the new startups, new entrepreneurs, venture capital?
I think I saw Stefano Vaccara. Ecco.
Yes, very quick.
Stefano
I'm a journalist, and ask you. We've been talking about business and family, but I want to ask you, what is your opinion if you are worried about democracy everywhere? If it's something that for your business could make things complicated. So what do you think about the status of democracy in the world, and especially in this country now?
Okay, let's start with the first question. Your neighbors.
They are heavy questions. In any case,
Excuse me, Alessandro, we have to be tight because of
right. No,
heavy questions.
I'll try to be as simple. What did I bring into from my previous experience? The fact that I've been investing in 100 different sectors in my life, especially small, medium-sized firms, led me to the conclusion that, as I said, at the beginning, you can find many different similarities in different situations, and I don't think there is a final recipe on things. But what I always recommend is to have an open, direct dialogue between the entrepreneurial soul that needs to stay alive and the managerial abilities, and that is something that needs to be done all the time. You should never. There was an Italian writer that says that by the time you find the answer, somebody's gonna change you the questions. I think you should always keep this in mind. That's how I would approach it. Interesting enough, traffic control. We actually do have a company in Mundys, which I did not mention, that is called Unix. And so when you get into London, that you got the measurement of the traffic and everything else, it's an Italian company. Actually, we bought it from Siemens, and yeah, I'm sure you know about it. And yes, I think that should be part of the approach. Having, as I said, an holistic view about the issues, sustainability and philanthropic, as you said. On the question whether the country is doing enough, I don't want to get into political things, because I think that there's no need to have an additional entrepreneur, talking about politics. But what I do think is that it's not just Italy. Europe is very much behind. I mean, it's amazing how it seems that we are not realizing that the world is going in that direction. Think about United States. Think about the Big Seven. And we are so much behind, and it seems nobody's worrying about that. So I think it's an Italian thing, but I think it's an
Your
European.
company.
Oh, no.
Bowman.
Well,
What do you do?
as I said, I talk about the Innovation Hub. I told you which we did both in Mundys and we did in Avolta. We recently launched a venture capital program that is called 2100 Ventures. So it's 2100, and where we're doing exactly that, trying to find to both make good investment that will keep us alive in terms of the world that is changing technological, but also have our own vehicle in order to promote cross-pollination among all these different activities that we have. And of course, we got my private equity, where the collaboration with Edizione is becoming stronger and stronger every day. We are in the private equity industry since the last 30 years, and in Europe, I think we have a good visibility on what is happening on SMEs.
Okay, so the
There
last
was
question
another
was
question,
about
which was like-
Lydia, and then I will have a final question for you, but it will come after you answer to
Right. If I'm worried, I should not say what you said at the beginning, that I advocate for, you should never be quiet, you should always be worried from Don Giussani, because that's not what I was advocating. In fact, the world today is so, I guess it's worrying for everybody, and the instability, the geopolitical issues that we have to face clearly make the environment more like a murky water type of environment. Having said that, which of course worries, having said that, I think that on one side we have to accept the fact that this instability moment is going to be stable from the way I look at it, and we need to make business conscious and reactive to this sort of continuous changes that we will have to face on all fronts, because it's a problem of geographies, it's a problem of technology, it's a problem of people. My recipe is keep on doing things, keep on moving forward, doing things so that whatever happens, even the things that you're doing wrong are going to be valuable lessons.
Thank you. So my last question, first of all, I'd like to add to what Stefano said, that we saw democracy at work. I mean, there was a democratic election that was won by someone, and that has to be taken into consideration as a success of democracy. Then we will see later how things will do, but that is where our starting point is. And I would like to link my question to that point, because people are worried about tariffs and the fact that the new administration will impose tariffs on Europe, and of course in Italy, Europe deals on trade issues as one voice, so Italy will not have the possibility of dealing directly. But there is lots of talk about these tariffs. Are you worried? How do we react? Shall small Italian companies start to think about investing here? How long it's going to be? What is your take on this as a practical issue that I think worries everybody?
My take is that clearly we are natural exporters as Italians to this country, so of course we need to worry about it, be conscious about it. On the other hand, I think that I'm not a political expert, but I think there is a lot of negotiating tactics in all of this. So we need to get ready for that, and the best way to get ready is to have a united voice as Europe.
Wonderful. We end with the wonderful note about United Europe. Thank you.